Emily sat in her sleek downtown Boston office, bathed in the dim glow of her computer screen. The constant hum of the city outside, punctuated by the soft drizzle of rain against the windows, provided an almost hypnotic rhythm as she scrolled through the last few emails of the day. It had been a week of long hours, back-to-back meetings, and endless negotiations as her tech startup inched closer to a critical investor pitch. The weight of it all hung over her like a heavy fog, but tonight, she had plans to escape, at least temporarily. She sighed deeply, stretching her arms as she glanced at the clock. 7:30 p.m. Her parents were expecting her by 9, and the drive to their suburban home always took a little longer in the rain. Emily hadn't visited them in months, her work life consuming her in ways she hadn't anticipated when she first embarked on the journey of launching her own company. But with the investor pitch looming, she knew she needed to clear her head, and a quiet evening away from the city seemed like the perfect solution. Just one more email, she muttered to herself, tapping away at her keyboard, her fingers moving quickly over the keys. She hit send and closed her laptop with a satisfied click. Her assistant, Jake, poked his head through the door, a wry smile on his face. "Boss, you're still here? I thought you were heading out." "Yeah, I'm leaving now," Emily replied, grabbing her coat and tossing it over her arm. "Just wanted to wrap a few things up." "You've been wrapping things up all day," Jake chuckled. "Don't you ever stop?" Emily gave him a tired smile. "I'll rest when this pitch is locked in." Jake shook his head but didn't argue. He knew better than to try to get her to slow down. "Drive safe, the weather's getting worse. And don't forget, you have that meeting with the developers first thing tomorrow." "Thanks for the reminder," she said, pulling her car keys from her purse. "I won't be late." As Emily walked out into the night, the drizzle had turned into a steady rain. She took a deep breath, the cold air biting at her cheeks, and hurried to her car. The sleek black sedan was parked right outside, and she slipped into the driver's seat, grateful for the warmth once the engine roared to life. She glanced out at the city lights fading into the distance as she navigated her way through the busy streets. By the time she reached the highway, the rain had intensified. The rhythmic tapping of the wipers was the only sound in the car, aside from the low hum of the radio, which Emily had turned down to help her concentrate on the road. The highway stretched out ahead, long and dark, illuminated only by the headlights of the occasional passing car. She hated driving in the rain, especially at night, but she pushed the thought aside, determined to focus. As she settled into the drive, her thoughts began to drift back to the pitch. This was the moment everything hinged on, the culmination of years of work, sleepless nights, and sacrifices. She thought about the team, how hard they had worked to bring the product to life. The stakes couldn't be higher, and she felt the pressure squeezing her chest tighter with each passing mile. Suddenly, her phone buzzed on the seat next to her, lighting up with a notification. Instinctively, Emily glanced down. It was an email from one of the investors she had been waiting to hear from. Her pulse quickened. Was this the email that would change everything? Without thinking, she reached for the phone, her eyes flicking between the road and the glowing screen. Just as her fingers brushed the edge of the phone, a pair of blinding headlights appeared out of nowhere, coming straight at her from the opposite lane. "Shit!" Emily gasped, yanking the steering wheel to the right, but it was too late. The truck, massive and barreling down the slick road, crossed into her lane, skidding uncontrollably on the wet pavement. The impact was sudden and violent. The world around her exploded in sound and motion as her car was thrown off the road, flipping into a shallow ditch on the side of the highway. Metal crunched and twisted, glass shattered, and the air was filled with a deafening roar of destruction. And then, silence. For what felt like an eternity, Emily didn't know where she was. Her body was twisted, pinned against the seat by the airbag that had deployed. The rain pounded against the broken windows, seeping into the car and mixing with the acrid smell of gasoline. Her head throbbed, and when she tried to move, pain shot through her chest like fire. She gasped, the air refusing to fill her lungs properly. It hurt to breathe. Everything hurt. "Help!" she tried to cry out, but her voice came out as a hoarse whisper, barely audible over the sound of the storm raging outside. With every passing second, her mind raced. Would anyone find her? Was anyone even looking? The highway had been almost deserted. And the truck, where was the truck? Had it crashed too? Or had it just driven off, leaving her here to die? Emily tried to move again, but her body was uncooperative. Every inch of her screamed in agony, and she could feel something wet on her face. Blood. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. She was hurt, badly hurt. Her vision blurred as tears mingled with the rain dripping onto her face. Memories flooded her mind, her childhood, her parents, her younger brother, the summer days at the lake. And then more recently, the long hours in the office, the pressure of building her startup, the sacrifices she had made. Was this how it would all end? The thought terrified her. But just as she began to spiral into panic, she heard it, a distant sound. Sirens. The wailing of an approaching ambulance cut through the storm, and with it came a glimmer of hope. Maybe they would find her. Maybe she would survive this. As the sirens grew louder, Emily's eyes fluttered closed, her body succumbing to the exhaustion and pain. The last thing she thought before losing consciousness was simple: I'm not ready to die. The first thing Emily became aware of was the cold. It seeped into her bones, numbing her skin and clouding her thoughts. The rain had soaked her completely, the water running down her face, mixing with the sticky warmth of blood. Every breath felt like a battle, each inhale sharp and painful, making her chest burn as if it were on fire. As her senses slowly returned, she realized she was still trapped in the car, the seatbelt pressing tightly against her body. The weight of the airbag had pushed her torso forward, but her legs were pinned beneath the twisted dashboard, the metal crumpled around her like a cruel cage. Panic shot through her as she tugged desperately at the seatbelt, her fingers trembling with the effort. It was no use, the belt was jammed. Help! She croaked, her voice barely audible, as if the sound itself had to claw its way out of her throat. Her vision blurred again, but this time she forced herself to focus. She couldn't give up now. She needed to fight, to survive. The world outside was a blur of rain and flashing lights. The sirens she had heard before seemed closer now, the rhythmic wail cutting through the stillness of the night. But no one was near yet. No one had reached her. She was alone, trapped in a mangled wreck, time ticking away. I have to get out of here, she thought. I can't wait for them to find me. What if it's too late? Summoning every ounce of strength she had left, Emily tried to move her legs. Pain shot up her spine, so intense it nearly knocked her out again. She screamed, biting down hard on her lip to keep from blacking out. But she couldn't stop. The agony only fueled her desperation. She pushed again, her legs barely shifting under the weight of the dashboard. Something cracked, a sickening crunch that echoed through the small space, but she didn't know if it was metal or bone. Her face twisted in pain, her body screaming at her to stop, but she couldn't. Not now. The rain continued to fall harder, the droplets hammering against the roof of the car, turning the world outside into a murky wash of gray. Inside, the cold seeped deeper into her, and the blood loss was starting to take its toll. Her head felt heavy, her thoughts slow and disconnected, as if they were slipping away from her. But she refused to let go. Think, Emily. Think. Her eyes darted around the wreckage. There had to be something, anything, that could help her escape. And then she saw it, the emergency release for the seatbelt, just within reach. Her fingers were slick with blood and rain, shaking uncontrollably, but she managed to stretch her arm toward it. The effort made her ribs scream in protest, but she ignored the pain, focusing entirely on the small button. Her fingertips brushed it once, twice, before finally catching hold of the release. With a click, the seatbelt snapped loose, and Emily collapsed back against the seat, gasping for air. But the relief was short-lived. She was still trapped by the twisted metal, her legs pinned and useless. She had freed her torso, but it wasn't enough. The sirens were louder now. The flashing lights cast eerie shadows across the inside of the car, but they still felt so far away. She couldn't wait for them to reach her. She couldn't afford to lose consciousness again. Stay awake. You have to stay awake. Emily clawed at the dashboard, trying to pull herself free, but her legs wouldn't budge. The pain was too much. The cold too overwhelming. Tears of frustration and fear blurred her vision, and she felt the edges of panic creeping in again. But just when she was about to give in, she heard something, a voice. Faint, but unmistakable. "Ma'am? Can you hear me? Hang in there, we're coming." Hope surged through her. They had found her. "Over here," she croaked, her voice raw and broken, but filled with desperation. "I'm here." The voice grew louder, closer, and soon, she could make out the shapes of people moving outside the car. Flashlights cut through the darkness, beams of light reflecting off the rain-slicked road. A face appeared at the broken window, a paramedic crouching down to peer inside. His expression was a mix of relief and concern, and his voice was calm, steady, but urgent. "We're going to get you out, okay? Just hold on." Emily nodded weakly, tears slipping down her cheeks. She didn't have the strength to say more. The cold was seeping deeper now, and her body was beginning to shut down, but she clung to the sound of the paramedic's voice like a lifeline. They worked quickly, their voices calm but urgent as they assessed the damage and started cutting through the wreckage. Emily could hear the metallic groan of the car as the tools tore into the twisted frame. The pain in her legs flared again as they shifted the dashboard, but she bit down on her lip, focusing on the thought of freedom, of escape, of survival. After what felt like an eternity, they managed to lift the dashboard just enough for her to pull her legs free. The moment they moved her, a fresh wave of pain coursed through her body, and the world tilted dangerously. But strong hands held her steady, and she felt herself being lifted, cradled by the paramedics as they pulled her from the wreckage. She gasped for air, her body trembling uncontrollably from the cold and the shock. The rain hit her face in icy bursts, but she didn't care. She was out. She was free. As they laid her on the stretcher and wrapped her in blankets, Emily felt the last of her strength fade. Her eyes fluttered closed, and for the first time since the crash, she allowed herself to let go. But just before darkness claimed her, one thought echoed through her mind, a promise she made to herself. "I'm going to survive this." Emily awoke to the sound of soft beeping. The world around her was quiet and sterile, with a steady hum of machines filling the room. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The bright overhead lights felt too harsh, making her wince as she tried to move her head. Pain radiated through her body, and she sucked in a sharp breath, the sensation jolting her back to the present. The accident. It all came rushing back, the rain, the screeching tires, the impact. Her heart raced as she relived those harrowing moments, but she forced herself to breathe, to calm down. She wasn't in the wreck anymore. She had survived. Blinking, Emily tried to sit up, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Her arms felt weak, and her legs, she couldn't feel them at all. Panic clawed at her chest as she looked down, finding her lower body swathed in bandages and wrapped in thick layers of blankets. Her legs were immobilized, held in place by heavy casts, and the sight of them sent a fresh wave of fear crashing over her. The door to the room creaked open, and a nurse stepped in, her face soft with concern but also with the practiced calm of someone used to seeing pain. She approached the bed slowly, her movements deliberate, as if not to startle Emily. "You're awake," the nurse said, her voice gentle. "How are you feeling?" Emily swallowed, her throat dry and sore. I can't feel my legs," she whispered, her voice cracking on the words. The panic she had been holding back surged forward, tears spilling down her cheeks. "What's wrong with me?" The nurse's expression didn't change, though Emily saw a flicker of sadness in her eyes. "You've been through a lot," she began, pulling up a chair beside the bed. "The accident caused some severe damage to your legs. You've had multiple surgeries already to try and repair the fractures and tissue damage." Emily's stomach turned. "Will I walk again?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, as if she was afraid of the answer. The nurse hesitated, and that pause, those few seconds of silence, felt like a lifetime. Emily's heart thudded in her chest as she waited for what felt like the most important answer she'd ever receive. "We don't know yet," the nurse said softly, reaching out to gently place a hand on Emily's. "It's too soon to say. But you're in good hands, and we're going to do everything we can to help you recover." Emily's breath caught in her throat. The uncertainty, the not knowing, it was worse than she could have imagined. She had survived the crash, but now she was facing a new kind of battle, one that would take everything she had. Tears blurred her vision as she turned her head away, staring at the ceiling. She felt helpless, trapped in her own body, and the overwhelming fear of what might come next settled heavily on her chest. As the nurse quietly left the room, giving her some space, Emily closed her eyes, willing herself to stay calm. But it was hard. How could she stay calm when her entire future, everything she had known about her life, had just been ripped away? Hours passed in a haze of pain and uncertainty. Doctors came in and out, each one delivering news that only deepened the pit of fear in her stomach. They spoke in soft, clinical tones, detailing her injuries, the fractures in her legs, the spinal damage that might or might not heal with time. There was no clear answer, only the brutal reality that she was facing a long, grueling recovery. And even then, there were no guarantees. Her family visited, their faces pale with worry, but their words were hopeful, filled with promises of support and love. Emily tried to smile for them, tried to pretend that she wasn't terrified, but the truth weighed heavily on her heart. What if she never walked again? What if she never regained her independence? Days turned into weeks, and the hospital became her world. The nurses were kind, but Emily found little comfort in their assurances. The physical therapy sessions were torture, every movement, every stretch, a reminder of how broken her body had become. She pushed herself through the exercises, but the frustration grew with each passing day, the lack of progress gnawing at her resolve. There were moments, fleeting but powerful, when she wanted to give up. When the pain and the uncertainty were too much to bear. She would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if it would have been easier if she hadn't survived the crash at all. But those thoughts, as dark as they were, never stayed long. Because despite the fear and the pain, Emily wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Her determination grew with each day, fueled by the memory of the accident. She had survived that night for a reason, and she wasn't going to let this defeat her. The road ahead was long, but she wasn't going to face it alone. Her family, her friends, they were there every step of the way, lifting her up when she stumbled, reminding her of her strength when she felt weak. And slowly, painfully, Emily began to heal. Not just physically, but mentally. She learned to accept the uncertainty, to face the possibility that her life might never be the same. But even if she couldn't walk again, she would find a way to live, to thrive. Because giving up was never an option. Emily had been home for a few days, but it felt like stepping into a completely different world. The hospital, with its sterile walls and constant hum of machines, had provided a sense of routine and purpose. Now at home, the silence was deafening. It echoed the uncertainty that loomed over her, pressing down like a weight on her chest. The living room was filled with flowers and get-well cards, colorful and cheerful reminders of the life she used to lead. But those vibrant blooms felt out of place, a stark contrast to her current reality. Every corner of the house seemed to whisper memories of a life she could barely recognize. Her family tried to create a supportive atmosphere, but Emily felt trapped. The once comforting walls of her home now felt like a prison. She longed for the freedom she had taken for granted, the ability to move without thinking, to walk outside and breathe in fresh air. Instead, she was confined to her wheelchair, navigating her home with caution and frustration. "Can I get you anything, Em?" her mother called from the kitchen one afternoon, her voice laced with concern. Emily glanced at her mother, who was preparing a meal, her apron dusted with flour. There was a time when Emily would have joined her in the kitchen, laughing and creating culinary disasters together. "I'm fine, Mom," Emily replied, forcing a smile that felt heavy on her face. Her mother peeked around the corner, worry etched into her features. "Are you sure? I can bring you some snacks. We could watch a movie together." The thought made Emily cringe. Movies reminded her of the carefree days when she would laugh and cry with her friends, not this heavy reality of wheelchairs and physical therapy. "I said I'm fine," she snapped, the frustration spilling over. She immediately regretted her tone when she saw the hurt in her mother's eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to." "It's okay, sweetheart," her mother interrupted softly, stepping back to give Emily space. "I just want to help." As her mother walked away, Emily felt a rush of guilt. She knew her family was trying to support her, but every gesture felt like a reminder of what she had lost. The kindness felt suffocating. She wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, she sat in her wheelchair, staring at the wall, battling the storm of emotions raging within her. Days turned into a blur of therapy sessions and family visits. She spent hours working with her physical therapist, who was determined to help her regain strength. Each session was exhausting, filled with exercises that pushed her limits. But for every small victory, like lifting her legs or moving her toes, there were moments of despair when the pain became too much, and she found herself crying. The therapist, a woman named Sarah, was patient and encouraging. "You're doing great, Emily," she said one afternoon after a particularly difficult session. "Every little bit counts. Just take it one step at a time." But those steps felt monumental. As Emily sat in her wheelchair, watching Sarah demonstrate exercises, the frustration bubbled within her. She wanted to stand, to walk, to reclaim her life. But the reality of her situation was a bitter pill to swallow. One evening, after a long day of therapy, Emily wheeled herself outside to the small porch. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood. It was beautiful, yet it felt like a cruel reminder of everything she couldn't enjoy. She closed her eyes, willing herself to breathe through the anguish. Suddenly, she heard a voice call out, breaking the silence. Emily. It was Jake, her childhood friend, standing by the gate with a huge grin. He was holding a basketball. "You want to shoot some hoops?" The sight of him stirred something inside her, an old spark of joy mixed with hesitation. She remembered their days spent playing basketball at the park, her legs moving freely as she laughed and ran. "Not right now," she replied, the words escaping before she could stop them. "Come on. It'll be fun." "I can even help you," Jake said, his enthusiasm undeterred by her rejection. Emily hesitated, her mind racing. She didn't want to be seen like this, in a wheelchair, unable to play like before. But deep down, she craved connection, a reminder of the life that still existed beyond her injuries. "Okay," she finally relented, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Jake rushed over, helping her maneuver her wheelchair to the driveway. As he positioned her closer to the hoop, Emily's heart raced. She hadn't touched a basketball in weeks. "Just take it easy," he said, handing her the ball. "We're just having fun." She grasped the basketball, the familiar texture grounding her in a sense of normalcy. With a deep breath, she focused on the hoop and took her shot. The ball sailed through the air, and for a moment, time froze. Then, it swished through the net, and Emily's heart soared. "Nice shot." Jake cheered, his eyes lighting up. A genuine smile broke across Emily's face, the first in days. It felt good, liberating even. For a brief moment, she felt like the girl she used to be, before the accident, before the pain and uncertainty. As they continued to play, laughter filled the air, drowning out the shadows of doubt that had haunted her. Emily felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. Maybe this was the beginning of her journey, the first step in a long road to recovery. That night, as she lay in bed, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. She still faced a long battle, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of determination. She wouldn't just survive this, she would find a way to thrive. Emily woke up the next morning with a newfound determination coursing through her veins. The memory of shooting hoops with Jake lingered, igniting a flicker of hope she hadn't felt in weeks. Today, she decided, would be different. Today, she would take control of her recovery and actively fight for her future. After breakfast, she wheeled herself into the living room, where her mother was folding laundry. "Mom," Emily said, her voice steady, "I want to go to physical therapy today, but I need to talk to Sarah about a new plan. I want to push myself harder." Her mother looked up, surprise written on her face. "That's great, Emily. Are you sure you're ready for that?" "I am," Emily replied, her eyes bright with resolve. "I want to make real progress." With a supportive nod, her mother smiled and helped her gather her things. The car ride to the therapy center felt shorter today, anticipation buzzed in the air. Emily was ready to reclaim her life, one small step at a time. When they arrived, the familiar smell of antiseptic and the sound of therapy equipment greeted her. Emily wheeled herself into the gym, where patients were working hard, each on their own journey. She spotted Sarah and called out, "I need to talk to you." Sarah turned, her expression welcoming. "Emily, it's good to see you. What's on your mind?" "I want to ramp up my therapy. I want to get stronger and faster," Emily declared, her voice full of conviction. "I need to know what I can do to make that happen." Sarah nodded, impressed by Emily's enthusiasm. "Absolutely. Let's create a personalized plan that challenges you but is still safe. I'll be right by your side every step of the way." With renewed energy, they discussed a rigorous training regimen that included balance exercises, strength training, and even some adaptive sports. The thought of trying new activities excited Emily. She felt a spark igniting within her. The sessions became more intense and focused. Emily worked tirelessly, pushing through the pain and fatigue that accompanied her efforts. Each drop of sweat became a symbol of her determination. She lifted weights, practiced standing up from her wheelchair, and even attempted to walk with the help of a walker. With each session, she felt stronger and more in control. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. There were days when the pain felt unbearable, and frustration threatened to overwhelm her. One afternoon, after a grueling session, she sat on the gym floor, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why can't I just be normal again?" she sobbed, feeling a sense of hopelessness wash over her. Sarah knelt beside her, offering a comforting presence. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed, Emily. Recovery is a process, and it's not always easy. But look at how far you've come. You're fighting, and that's what matters." Emily wiped her tears, taking a deep breath. "I just want to feel like myself again." "You will," Sarah assured her. "This is a journey, and every small victory counts. Let's focus on those victories." Determined to turn her frustration into fuel, Emily made a commitment to herself. She would embrace the journey, no matter how long it took. With each passing week, she began to see improvements. She was able to stand for longer periods, and even took her first steps with the walker. One day, as she was practicing, Jake showed up unexpectedly. "Hey, superstar," he called out, leaning against the wall with a wide grin. "I heard you're making waves in here." Emily couldn't help but smile back, feeling a surge of pride. "I'm trying. It's tough, but I'm getting there. Can I join in?" Jake asked, excitement evident in his voice. "Of course." Emily replied, eager to show him what she could do. They spent the afternoon practicing shooting hoops, with Jake encouraging her every step of the way. Emily's heart raced as she made basket after basket, laughter filling the air. It felt incredible to be in motion, to reclaim a piece of her old self. As they finished their session, Emily felt a sense of accomplishment unlike any other. The weight of her situation still loomed, but the lightness of joy and friendship provided a much-needed balance. She was learning to embrace the ups and downs, knowing that both were part of her story. But with progress came a new challenge. Emily was faced with the reality that her accident had also impacted her friends and family. One evening, she overheard her parents talking quietly in the living room, their voices tinged with concern. "I'm worried about her," her mother said, her tone serious. "Emily is trying so hard, but I can see how much this is affecting her." "It's a lot for her to handle," her father replied gently. "We need to support her, but we also have to be realistic about her recovery. It's going to be a long road." Emily's heart sank as she listened. She didn't want to be a burden, and the thought of her family worrying about her made her stomach twist. She decided then that she would not only fight for herself, but also show her family that she was strong enough to face the challenges ahead. With renewed determination, Emily resolved to engage her family more actively in her journey. The next day, she gathered everyone together. "I know this has been hard on all of you," she began, her voice steady. "But I want you to know that I'm working hard, and I'm committed to getting better. I need your support, but I also need you to believe in me." Her parents exchanged glances, relief washing over their faces. "We do believe in you, Emily," her father said. "We're proud of your strength." With that conversation, the atmosphere in their home began to shift. They became a united front, working together to navigate the challenges that lay ahead. Emily felt a sense of purpose grow within her, a commitment not just to herself but to her family, who had stood by her side throughout this journey. As the weeks passed, Emily continued to grow stronger, both physically and emotionally. She embraced the struggle, finding strength in her vulnerability. And with every small victory, she moved closer to reclaiming her life. Emily felt a wave of excitement as she entered the therapy gym that morning. Her muscles ached from the previous day's intense session, but she was filled with a sense of purpose. Today marked the beginning of a new phase in her recovery. Sarah had told her that she would be testing her limits, and Emily was ready to rise to the challenge. "All right, Emily, today we're going to do something different," Sarah announced, clapping her hands together to get Emily's attention. "We're going to introduce some obstacle courses to help you improve your mobility and confidence." Emily's eyes widened in surprise. "Obstacle courses? Like really?" "Absolutely. They'll help you practice navigating different terrains and improve your strength," Sarah replied with an encouraging smile. "It might be tough, but I know you can handle it." The thought of facing obstacles excited Emily, but also made her stomach churn with anxiety. What if she stumbled or fell? What if she wasn't ready? But she quickly shook off those thoughts. She had come too far to let fear hold her back. As they set up the course, Emily watched a series of cones, small hurdles, and balance beams take shape. Each element looked intimidating, but she was determined to conquer them all. "Okay, Emily, let's start with the cones," Sarah suggested, pointing to a row of colorful cones spaced evenly apart. "You can either walk around them or try to maneuver through them." Taking a deep breath, Emily positioned her walker in front of her. She focused on the first cone, her heart pounding in her chest. With shaky determination, she took her first step. The feeling of the ground beneath her feet brought a rush of exhilaration, and before she knew it, she was weaving through the cones, laughter bubbling up as she successfully navigated each one. "You're doing amazing." Sarah cheered, her voice filled with encouragement. After finishing the cone course, Emily moved on to the small hurdles. They were low enough for her to step over, but the thought of jumping made her nervous. She hesitated, taking a moment to center herself. "I can do this," she whispered under her breath. With a focused mindset, she approached the first hurdle. Lifting her foot, she cleared it with ease. "Yes," she exclaimed, feeling a rush of confidence. She continued down the line, tackling each hurdle and celebrating her successes with each jump. Next, it was time for the balance beam. As she stepped onto the narrow surface, Emily felt her heart race. The beam wobbled slightly beneath her, and she struggled to maintain her balance. With each inch she moved, the fear of falling crept in. But she recalled Sarah's earlier words, "You can do this." Focusing on her breathing, Emily took another step. Then another. The beam felt steadier with each passing moment. She managed to reach the end and let out a triumphant cheer, her spirit soaring. "Fantastic job, Emily." Sarah clapped her hands together, beaming with pride. "You've made incredible progress today." Just as Emily was about to bask in her success, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her heart sinking as she read the message from Jake. "Hey, I need to talk to you. It's important." Concern washed over her, but she quickly pushed it aside, reminding herself of the joy she had just experienced. However, the weight of the message lingered in her mind, casting a shadow over her triumph. After finishing the obstacle course, Emily decided to confront Jake about his message. She wheeled herself over to him, who was waiting by the entrance, his face serious. "Hey, what's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something," Jake began, his expression grave. "I want you to know that I'm really proud of you and everything you've accomplished. But I also need to be honest, I'm feeling overwhelmed. It's been hard for me to see you struggle." Emily felt her heart drop. "Jake, I understand. I know this hasn't been easy for you either. I don't want to hurt you. I've been thinking about what happens next." "We're both at a crossroads," he said, his voice shaky. "Crossroads," she repeated, feeling a mixture of confusion and anxiety. "Yeah. I care about you so much, but I feel like I need some space to figure things out for myself." "I don't want to hold you back," he explained, his eyes searching hers. The words hit Emily like a ton of bricks. She understood where he was coming from, but the thought of losing him felt unbearable. "Jake, please don't go. We can figure this out together. You don't have to do it alone." "I know and I want to support you, but I can't be your crutch," he said, his voice cracking. "You're getting stronger every day, and I need to take a step back to find my own way too." Emily fought back tears as she processed his words. It was true that they were both on their own journeys, but she didn't want to lose the connection they had built. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered. "I'll always care about you, Emily," he said gently. "But I think it's best for both of us right now." As Jake walked away, a heavy silence enveloped Emily. She felt a sense of loss and confusion wash over her. She had fought so hard to reclaim her life, but this felt like a setback she hadn't anticipated. Returning to her therapy sessions felt different after that conversation. Each session was accompanied by a sense of solitude, as the excitement of progress began to fade into an emotional fog. But Emily refused to wallow in despair. She poured herself into her therapy, channeling her heartbreak into determination. Every obstacle she conquered became a tribute to her strength, a reminder that she was capable of overcoming anything. As the days turned into weeks, Emily found herself returning to the core of what mattered most, her resilience and the power of her journey. She realized that while relationships could be complicated, her commitment to herself and her recovery was the strongest bond she could cultivate. Then one day, as she was practicing at the therapy center, Emily noticed a flyer on the bulletin board. It was for an upcoming adaptive sports competition. Her heart raced as she read about the event. This was a chance to showcase her hard work and dedication. With excitement bubbling inside her, she decided to sign up. It was time to put her skills to the test and show the world what she was made of. No matter the outcome, Emily knew that this competition would be a powerful affirmation of her journey and her unwavering spirit. The day of the adaptive sports competition arrived, and Emily could hardly contain her excitement. She woke up early, her heart racing as she went through her morning routine. It was more than just a competition, it was a celebration of her journey, a testament to the struggles she had faced and overcome. As she arrived at the venue, she was greeted by an atmosphere filled with energy and enthusiasm. Colorful banners decorated the space, and the sound of laughter and cheers filled the air. Athletes of all abilities were mingling, sharing stories of their own journeys. Emily felt a sense of camaraderie wash over her. This was a community that understood her struggles and celebrated her victories. She checked in at the registration booth, where volunteers greeted her with warm smiles and encouraging words. "Are you ready for this, Emily?" one of them asked. "Absolutely," she replied, her voice filled with confidence. The event started with an opening ceremony, where participants gathered to hear inspiring speeches from former athletes who had overcome their own challenges. Their stories resonated deeply with Emily, fueling her determination. She felt empowered, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As the competition began, Emily's nerves tingled in anticipation. The first event was the wheelchair race. She took her place at the starting line alongside other competitors, each one ready to give their all. The signal to start echoed in her ears, and she propelled herself forward with all her might. The wind whipped past her as she raced down the track, every ounce of energy fueling her drive to succeed. But midway through the race, she noticed a fellow competitor struggling to keep up. The woman's wheelchair had a flat tire, and Emily felt a surge of empathy. She could easily focus on her own race, but something within her urged her to stop. "Do you need help?" Emily called out, wheeling over to her. The woman looked up, tears in her eyes. "I don't know what to do. I can't finish like this," she said, despair evident in her voice. In that moment, Emily made a choice. "Let's work together. I can help you get to the finish line." Without hesitation, she assisted the woman, fixing the tire just enough to make it possible for her to continue. As they both resumed the race, Emily felt a warmth in her heart. The cheers from the crowd were drowned out by the sound of her own determination. They crossed the finish line together, not as competitors, but as friends. After the race, the next event was the obstacle course that Emily had been looking forward to. As she positioned herself at the starting line, she could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The moment felt surreal. All her training and hard work had led to this point. With a loud whistle, the race began. Emily expertly maneuvered through the cones, her body moving with confidence and grace. Each hurdle felt like a tribute to the struggles she had faced in her journey. The crowd erupted in cheers as she cleared them one by one, feeling more powerful with every step. As she approached the balance beam, memories of her earlier practice flooded back. The fear and uncertainty were replaced by unwavering determination. She took a deep breath and focused, stepping onto the beam. It wobbled beneath her, but she steadied herself and moved forward with purpose. Suddenly, just as she was about to reach the end, her foot slipped, and she stumbled. A gasp rippled through the crowd. For a moment, time stood still as she felt herself teetering on the edge. But in that split second, Emily remembered everything she had fought for: the tears, the setbacks, the triumphs. She regained her balance, pushing herself back up. "I got this," she shouted, her voice ringing with confidence. With renewed energy, she surged forward, finishing the course with a flourish. The crowd erupted in applause, and Emily felt an overwhelming sense of joy and pride. After the obstacle course, Emily sat with her fellow competitors, sharing stories and laughter. She felt a connection with each person there, a bond forged through shared experiences. It was more than just about winning. It was about the journey, the community, and the strength found within each other. As the day progressed, Emily realized she had grown stronger not just in her physical abilities, but in her character as well. She had learned the true meaning of resilience, not only by overcoming her challenges, but by lifting others up along the way. Finally, the award ceremony commenced. Emily's heart raced as they announced the winners. When her name was called for third place in the obstacle course, she felt a rush of disbelief. As she accepted her medal, she looked out into the crowd, searching for familiar faces. There was Jake, standing among the spectators, clapping with pride. Their eyes met, and in that instant, Emily felt a wave of emotions. The journey had changed her, and she could see it in the way he looked at her. She knew they still had challenges to face together, but she felt hopeful. With the medal around her neck, she raised her arms in triumph, a symbol of her perseverance and growth. The audience erupted in cheers, and she reveled in the moment. She had not only proven to herself what she was capable of, but had also found her place within a community of warriors. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the event, Emily knew that this was just the beginning. Her journey was far from over, and she was excited for the adventures that lay ahead. The sun rose over the horizon, casting a golden light on the world below. Emily awoke that morning with a sense of peace and purpose that she had never experienced before. The events of the adaptive sports competition lingered in her mind, each moment replaying like a cherished memory. She felt a newfound sense of identity, no longer defined solely by her disability but by her strength, resilience, and the connections she had forged along the way. The following days were filled with excitement as Emily began to embrace the support she received from her community. She decided to share her experiences by starting a blog titled The Resilient Journey. With each post, she poured her heart into her writing, detailing her struggles, victories, and the lessons she had learned. Her words resonated with many, drawing readers from all walks of life who found inspiration in her journey. One evening, as Emily sat at her favorite cafe, sipping coffee and typing away, she received an unexpected message. It was from a non-profit organization that focused on promoting adaptive sports. They had come across her blog and were impressed by her story. They wanted her to join their team as a spokesperson, sharing her journey and advocating for more inclusive sports opportunities. Overwhelmed with emotion, Emily felt a surge of excitement and gratitude. This was an opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of others. She responded with enthusiasm, and soon, she was working alongside passionate individuals who shared her vision of empowering athletes of all abilities. Together, they organized events, workshops, and outreach programs, spreading awareness about adaptive sports and encouraging others to embrace their strengths. As Emily dove deeper into her new role, she found herself speaking at schools, community centers, and conferences. Each time she shared her story, she felt the energy of the audience ignite her passion. She met so many people, each with their own stories of struggle and triumph. They connected with her message, often approaching her afterward to express how her journey had inspired them. One day, after a particularly moving presentation at a local high school, a young girl approached her, eyes shining with admiration. "You're my hero," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "If you can do it, I know I can too." Emily felt a wave of warmth wash over her, realizing the profound impact she was having on others. This moment solidified her belief that sharing her story was not just for herself, but for everyone who needed a reminder that they could rise above their challenges. As the months passed, Emily's influence grew. She was invited to participate in panels and workshops, and her blog gained a dedicated following. She documented her training for upcoming competitions, sharing both the triumphs and the struggles. Her authenticity resonated deeply, allowing others to see the raw, unfiltered reality of pursuing dreams despite obstacles. Emily's relationship with Jake blossomed as well. He had been a constant source of support throughout her journey, always there to encourage her when doubt crept in. Together, they trained for their first tandem cycling event, a new challenge that excited them both. They shared laughs and moments of frustration, but through it all, they grew closer, united by their love for adventure and their unwavering belief in each other. One day, while training in the park, Emily took a break to catch her breath. Sitting side by side, she turned to Jake, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she admitted, her voice filled with sincerity. Jake smiled, his eyes sparkling with warmth. "You've always had this strength within you, Emily. I just helped you see it." Their bond deepened, and they became each other's pillars of strength, inspiring one another to push beyond their limits. Then came the day of the National Adaptive Sports Championship. Emily and Jake arrived at the venue, buzzing with excitement. The atmosphere was electric, filled with athletes from across the country, all eager to showcase their talents. As Emily wheeled herself to the registration booth, she took a moment to soak it all in. This was not just about competition, it was a celebration of resilience, community, and the relentless pursuit of dreams. As the opening ceremony began, Emily found herself reflecting on her journey. She thought of all the obstacles she had faced, the fears she had conquered, and the connections she had made. She felt a sense of pride swell within her. The competition was fierce, but Emily remained focused. She poured her heart and soul into every event, fueled by the knowledge that she was no longer alone on this journey. She had a community of supporters cheering her on, friends who believed in her, and the strength of her own spirit pushing her forward. After a long day of events, the time came for the final race, the moment that would determine the championship. Emily lined up at the starting line, her heart pounding with anticipation. She glanced at the other competitors, each one embodying strength and determination. As the whistle blew, Emily propelled herself forward with all her might, the cheers of the crowd echoing in her ears. In those moments, it was just her and the track. She focused on the rhythm of her wheels against the ground, the wind rushing past her, and the exhilaration of the race. Every ounce of energy she had poured into her training surged through her, driving her forward. As she approached the finish line, everything seemed to slow down. The world around her faded away, and all that mattered was crossing that line. With one final push, she surged ahead, crossing the finish line in a moment of triumph. The roar of the crowd filled her ears, but it was the realization of what she had achieved that brought tears to her eyes. Emily had not only won the race but had also embraced her identity, her journey, and the incredible community that had surrounded her. After the race, as she stood on the podium with her medal gleaming around her neck, she took a deep breath and looked out at the crowd. She spotted Jake, his face beaming with pride, and she felt her heart swell with love. In that moment, she knew that this was not just a personal victory. It was a testament to the power of resilience, community, and the human spirit. As she raised her medal high, Emily realized that her journey was just beginning. The obstacles she had overcome had not defined her. Instead, they had shaped her into the person she had always been meant to be. And with that understanding, she felt an overwhelming sense of hope and excitement for what lay ahead. She had become a symbol of strength and inspiration, and she was ready to continue sharing her story with the world. With the support of her community, her friends, and her own unyielding spirit, Emily knew she could face anything that came her way. With a heart full of gratitude and determination, she stepped off the podium, ready to embrace the next chapter of her life.